This footage that you are now watching was taken by me on Tuesday, August 26th in the afternoon. I was traveling in a vehicle with an IDF driver who was armed, of course, and we were part of a convoy that entered the Gaza Strip from the Kerem Shalom crossing in southern Israel. For about 15 minutes, we drove along a newly paved road that ran very close by the border with Egypt, and we went into the outskirts of the city of Rafah. We were a small group of Western journalists embedded with the IDF to learn about a new humanitarian aid complex being built by Israel. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Welcome to the State of Tel Aviv and beyond. Today, we have a special two-part podcast. This footage was taken by me. I am sitting now in the front seat of an SUV heading from Kerem Shalom into the Gaza Strip and towards Rafah, which abuts the area where the humanitarian zone Muwasi is located. Approximately 800,000 Gazans are sheltering there now. 2 years of war have destroyed every building for miles, as you can see. Food and water are scarce. Civilians live in primitive tents. Israel wants and needs this war to end. Hamas wants and needs this war to continue. And Hamas also wants and needs civilian casualties in Gaza City in order to ensure that international pressure and condemnation of Israel remain at a high boil. In the midst of the backdrop, the Israeli government has directed the IDF to prepare additional sites that can ensure a safe and steady supply of food, water, and other humanitarian needs for up to 2 million people should they choose to flee to the southern humanitarian zone. And this is to be done safely and securely, which until now, of course, has been a problem with aid distribution sites in the Gaza Strip. So we, the small group of journalists, were invited to embed with the IDF and to have a sneak preview, a look at what is being developed on the outskirts of Rafah. What we did not know last week, but has since been confirmed, is that the US-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will be operating this newly constructed site. And what is most important is that civilians will have safe and ongoing access to food, water, medicine, and hygiene 24/7. I spoke with Lieutenant Colonel and IDF International Spokesperson Nadav Shimoni on site last week at the aid distribution site. And here's what he had to say.
Here we are standing. Explain where we're standing right now.
Well, we're standing in where the IDF is creating the conditions for new distribution sites to be established. This is a site in southern Gaza, just a few hundred meters, a quarter of a mile away from the Muwasi, where hundreds of Gazans are staying. And this could be a site where millions of meals are handed out per day for the people of Gaza. You can see the area was flattened out and made to be a functional area for trucks of aid to come in, for the people of Gaza to come in. This area is just a few minute drives away from the border. That makes it very easy and efficient for trucks to come in. And it's a few minute walks away from the Muwasi, where a lot of the Gazans are staying. In the coming weeks, probably most of the Gazans will be staying. And the idea is to bring the aid closer to the people of Gaza, make it simpler, make it safer, make it quicker.
And you gave us a really good quick tour and showed us the path that the civilians who will be in Muwasi will be walking to arrive at this food distribution point. It's about, half a kilometer, I think you said?
Yeah.
More or less. So 500 meters. They come in, and I've documented it visually. They receive their food, and then they exit and go back. The route is not only, it's a circular route, it's safe, it's secure. And the expectation is, as you said, millions of meals will be distributed here on a daily basis. We're standing here in this searing heat in the middle of the day. I'm wondering, when people come down and at least enter into this compound, will there be some kind of sun protection?
Well, this area is supposed to be a quick in and out. It's supposed to be a few minute walk, a quick pickup and then a few minutes back to wherever they're staying.
Right.
We've been here for over half an hour wearing equipment and helmets, and we're okay. And the idea is for people to come in just for a few minutes, pick up the aid, go back, a few minutes walks back to where they're staying, with food for their entire family.
Right. And you said earlier also that there are close to 1 million people in Muwasi at the moment.
Right.
There's
approximately 800,000 people in the Muwasi.
Right.
More than 1 million, though, in the central area of Muwasi and central camps in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. And once the offensive that we're all expecting to begin very soon on Gaza City, at the moment IDF troops are circling Gaza City, but when that begins, the expectation is that there will be many more people in Muwasi seeking shelter, correct?
There's already been people moving from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, understanding that northern Gaza is a place where is infested with Hamas, and southern Gaza is a place that is enriched with water, with aid, with tents, and with equipment for the people.
How are you going to ensure that it remains that way? Because, of course, this movement was attempted earlier in the war. It's been attempted a number of times. There has been resistance from the UN and other organizations to assist in the movement of civilians. That's me saying it, not you.
Yeah.
But also, we know that Hamas were among the civilians taking shelter in Muwasi. In fact, we know that Arbel Yehud, one of the hostages who was released in the last deal in the winter, was actually living for a period of time in a tent in Muwasi. What is the IDF going to do differently this time to ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, we understand Hamas abuses the population and abuses the population of Gaza. We have advanced methods now to make sure that when we are giving the people a warning, get out of harm's way, that Hamas is not getting out of harm's way, because we want to catch those Hamas terrorists. We want to make sure we do our best, and that's what we're operating. We will be acting with caution to make sure that people have a chance to get out of Gaza City, but to make sure that we are able to keep Hamas there and fight them. That's the idea, and we know Hamas is going to try to hide among civilians. Muhammad Dev, the leader of Hamas, was hiding in this humanitarian area, understanding that might risk people, and we understand that is the reality of who we're facing. We're committed to our values to make sure we're fighting the terrorists, the jihadi terrorists, and not fighting the population of Gaza.
The IDF offensive on Gaza City is expected to launch in the coming days, possibly weeks. And there have been tens of thousands of IDF reservists called up, but they will be reporting for duty in a staggered manner. So in the meantime, the IDF is encircling Gaza City, turning up the heat on Hamas, and of course, hoping that Hamas will accede to Israeli demands. And the likelihood of that happening is probably very remote, for reasons, of course, that you will hear in the next part of this podcast when I discuss the many complex issues, military, humanitarian, the hostages, all of which come together in this moment and in this very complex mix. I'm back, and we're now going to go straight into our second part of this episode, which is a discussion with Ya'akov Katz from last Wednesday, August 27th. Since we recorded, all that really has changed is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has really dug in his position that Israel will not accept the Hamas response to the hostage deal that was under discussion. It was, of course, a partial deal that provided for the immediate release of 10 living hostages as well as bodies of deceased hostages. But Prime Minister Netanyahu has now made it very clear that he is no longer prepared to consider a partial deal, as it's called, a staged deal, that it's all or nothing. That either all hostages are released in one fell swoop, Hamas puts down its arms, and relinquishes power. And if those terms are not agreed to, he will instruct the IDF to move in on Gaza City, which is where it is believed the hostages are being held, and it's the kind of stronghold of Hamas now. So let's do this. Let's move on to our discussion with Ya'akov Katz. We have a situation now. I was actually with the IDF, embedded with the IDF yesterday for a few hours. They took us into the outskirts of Rafah, very close, 500 meters from the Al-Musawi Humanitarian Zone, which we were told now has 800,000 more or less civilians sheltering there. And once the anticipated offensive on Gaza City begins by the IDF in the coming days, they expect those numbers to swell to 1.5 to 2 million people. What the IDF has been busy doing in that region, 500 meters from Musawi, is building the physical structure for an aid distribution site. And it's actually been thought through, so there's a protected path. The civilians will come in, gather their food, and leave. They will not be exposed to Hamas or PIDG or criminal gangs. It's a short route that will be protected. The warehouse will be well supplied because it's so close to the Kerem Shalom border crossing in Israel, and the whole route is controlled by Israel, and it will also operate 24/7 if need be. That's the plan. Israel's finishing construction now to be handed over to ? In a few days. But the context of that is that rather than accepting a hostage deal on terms that Hamas approved, and I understand 90% identical to what Israel was demanding, that rather than accept that deal, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government have decided to launch a major offensive on Gaza City within days. Why? What's going on?
I mean, look, Israel is still stuck in this very deep dilemma of what is the right way forward. It seems to some extent that the prime minister has reached the understanding that the war is winding down finally. We even heard Donald Trump mention just a few days ago that the war will be over in 2-3 weeks, or he hopes at least. The way for the war to end, at least from Israel's perspective, it can't end with hostages still in Hamas captivity, and it can't end with Hamas still governing Gaza. So how do you get those two achievements in one? And here we know that we need a deal, but we also know that a deal won't happen without some measure of military pressure. Every time the Hamas has acquiesced and agreed to a deal, there was military pressure. So that's part of what this Gaza offensive is. On the one hand, Israel's getting ready. On the one hand, it's also starting. On the other hand, it's telling reservists, we're calling you up in a few weeks. In other words, there's time. There's a window. It's signaling to Hamas that the door hasn't closed on negotiations, but let's make the deal quickly, because if you don't, we're going in. So there's a lot of signaling that's being done through the call-up, through the operations, through the hesitancy with which the operation is being launched. And it's all aimed at getting that deal done. Then there's the other question of what type of deal. Until now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has always been in favor of a phased deal. Some hostages, a short ceasefire, more negotiations, more hostages, but no end to the war. Now he's in favor of a comprehensive deal. All hostages, including an end to the war. So when he was in favor of the phased deal, his opponents and critics said, you're wrong, go for a comprehensive deal. Now that he's in favor of the comprehensive deal, his critics are saying, why aren't you doing what Hamas has agreed to, which is the phased deal? There's nothing's ever black and white, I think, as we've discovered over the last 22 months, Vivian. And there's arguments in both directions. I want to hope that one thing has shifted here. And this, the only time will tell. We do know for certain that political considerations were constantly in the way up until this point, and that threats by his coalition members, particularly Ben Gvir and Smotrich, stopped deals from being made. Is Netanyahu now at the point that he no longer will take that into consideration and he will make the decision that's right for the country? We've yet to see that be proven. That's the fact. I hope it is. And I know that you hope it is. I think the vast majority of the country hopes that's the case. But that will be the real test, because if he does what's right for the country, then there's probably a clear path forward. And that is keep up the pressure on Hamas, get to the table, end the war, bring home the hostages, and call it a day.
But isn't the fact that he's rejecting the partial deal, which he had agreed to a week or two before we received agreement from Hamas? In fact, we don't know that he's rejected. He's not reacted. The government has not provided an official reaction to Hamas's acceptance. And the fact that he's now saying, kind of through silence, I'm not jumping at this partial deal. Isn't that in and of itself a sign that he's acquiescing to pressure from Smotrich and Ben Gvir? Because their pitch, their approach has never changed. It has always been go in, occupy, settle, destroy Hamas, and they have very much treated the rescue of the hostages as being, in my view, a very secondary issue. And it seems that's exactly what Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing.
I mean, I hear that 100%, and I tend to agree with you, but I also think that there's an argument to be made on the other side, that if now he agrees to a phase deal, pulls back the pressure, the buildup, the call-up, and stops the military, because they'll have to pull back to different lines, and they won't be launching the offensive, what guarantee do we have that Hamas will then release the remaining batch of the living hostages? Because there's about 20. President Trump has said there might be 1 or 2 who are no longer alive out of the 20, so we don't know exactly the number at the moment. The Israeli government's not telling us. But if we go with 20, under the phase deal, you get 10, you get some of the bodies, and you release the valve of pressure. What guarantee do you have that you're going to get the other 10 and the rest of those bodies in the second phase of this phase deal? So there is an argument being made, keep up the pressure at the high intensity, what it's at now, to get everyone at once. Not sure it'll work, but that seems to be the strategy. I agree with you. Smotrich and Ben Gvir, we have to recognize it's not just about a priority consideration. What do they really want? What do they want less? They have a different vision for Israel. Let's keep this in mind. They believe in resettling the Gaza Strip and rebuilding the Gush Katif settlement block. So when they look to the future, it's not one of, we get back the hostages or we not get back the hostages. They see this moment in history as an opportunity to expand greater Israel, to enact a vision that is very different than one that you or I think about when we think of the future of the state.
And they do that openly, and in their view, that is much more important than rescuing 10, 20 hostages. They've made that very clear. I think just in closing that there have been so many leaks, even more than usual, of the dissenting view of IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir, who Prime Minister Netanyahu appointed about 4 or 5 months ago to the position. There's significant tension reportedly between the two men, with Zamir really not seeming to agree with the approach that the Prime Minister has undertaken, and saying we have accomplished militarily everything that is possible. Getting the hostages out must be resolved diplomatically through negotiation. And in terms of total destruction of Hamas, I think it's pretty clear that's just something we will never be able to accomplish militarily, because we're not sending soldiers into that 500-kilometer labyrinth of tunnels to die. So we've got ourselves boxed in. I hear your argument, or your representation of the position that maintaining military pressure on Hamas may yield results. I unfortunately am skeptical that it will yield the results that we would want, which would be the release of all hostages and the surrender of Hamas. And those are the Prime Minister's terms. And we must remember, of course, almost exactly a year ago today, when the IDF came too close, 6 hostages got a bullet to the head. So, there's also that. Bottom line is, it's a bag of snakes. Nobody knows. But as you state, I really do hope that the Prime Minister is putting aside political interests at this point.
Yes.
And working in the best interest of the state. And it's kind of sad that we even have to say that, isn't it?
It's terrible that we have to say that, but we have to hope that's now the case. And he understands that this needs to end, and needs to end with the hostages home.
Ya'akov, thank you for taking time out of your holiday. And I hope you continue to enjoy your time away. Really helpful insights.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thanks again for tuning in. I'm going to take a few days of vacation, but I'll be back next week with lots more. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to hello@stateoftelaviv.com. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Yon Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team. Thanks to you for being here. We'll be back soon.